let me ask you a serious geopolitical question. What does it mean when the United States is simultaneously conducting airstrikes while also participating in the peace negotiations? Does that indicate that diplomacy is working, or does it suggest that the region is moving towards a much larger conflict? Right now, the Middle East is witnessing exactly this contradiction. The United States has carried out fresh strikes on Iranian targets even as the ceasefire negotiations continue in Qatar. At the same time, Israel has intensified operations linked to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And in all of this, in the background, the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most dangerous strategic choke points. Now, this is no longer just an Iran issue. This is now connected to oil markets. It's connected to global shipping. It is connected to Israel, Lebanon, Hezbollah, and broader American strategy in the Middle East. So today, we will understand why the US has launched a fresh strike, why Lebanon has become central again, what the peace talks are actually about, and whether the Middle East is moving towards stability or a prolonged conflict. Welcome viewers to Legacy IAS. In this video, we are going to cover an important topic which reads in the newspaper article which says, will peace talks collapse after the US conducts defensive strikes against Iran? Now first, let us try and understand what has happened with respect to the fresh strikes amid the fragile ceasefire. Okay, so let us begin with the immediate development that has happened. And in this, you will understand why did the United States strike Iran again? According to multiple reports, US forces have targeted missile launch facilities and mine laying vessels in the southern Iran. The strikes reportedly occurred near the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most strategic important waterways. The United States have described the operations as self-defense strikes. Now, American officials, what do they claim? The American officials claimed Iranian activities posed threats to the US troops and regional security. Now, this is extremely important to understand. The Strait of Hormuz handles a massive share of the global oil transport. Now, if this route is disrupted, the global oil prices can surge dramatically. The shipping networks can be affected, and the inflationary pressure can spread across economies worldwide. Moreover, the reports have suggested that the Iranian vessels were allegedly attempting to lay naval mines near the strait. Now, whether it is fully confirmed or not, the perception of the perception of it becomes strategically important. Okay, and now comes the contradiction. The contradiction is that at the same time, when they are conducting these strikes, the United States and Iran are also holding negotiations in Qatar. So, what is happening there? The answer is that modern geopolitics they often combine diplomacy and coercion simultaneously. So the United States is negotiating while also maintaining the military pressure. And this is what analysts describe as the current ceasefire, because they are saying that this current ceasefire is extremely fragile. Okay, it is very, very sensitive. All right. So the reason here that is being given is that military escalation and diplomacy are now occurring together. Here, a very important line, important insight is that the Middle East is witnessing negotiations under the shadow of missiles. Okay, now let us move to the second major front, and that is Lebanon. Okay, that is Israel, Hezbollah, and the Lebanon front. Understanding this part. Okay. Israel has intensified military operations linked to Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. And at the same time, the Hezbollah continues attacks towards the northern Israel. Drone and rocket activity has continued despite temporary ceasefire efforts. Now, this is where the things become strategically complicated. Hezbollah is not an isolated actor, it is deeply linked with Iran, which means that Lebanon front is directly connected to the broader Iran crisis. And this is why Iran has reportedly linked Lebanon related demands to wider negotiations with the United States. Meanwhile, the United States has also been mediating direct Israel Lebanon discussions. These talks are historically significant. It is because the direct negotiations between Israel and Lebanon are extremely rare. However, the ceasefire remains unstable. Hezbollah was not formally a part of some ceasefire arrangements, which creates continuous risk of renewed escalation. Now, understand the danger here. Middle Eastern conflicts rarely remain isolated. If the Lebanon front expands, it can go and it can pull in multiple directions across the region. And this is exactly why the international community is worried, because the conflict is no longer limited to a single battlefield. Here, an important side is that in the Middle East, alliances turn the local conflicts into regional crises. Now, let us examine the most important question, that is, what are the peace talks actually about? All right. So, the real negotiation with respect to uranium, oil, and regional power. All right. So, what are these peace talks about? Most people will assume that these peace talks are simply ceasefire negotiations. But if we talk about reality, the discussions are much larger. The first major issue is about the Iran's enriched uranium stockpile. The United States want Iran to surrender or neutralize highly enriched uranium. Iran, however, insists that its uranium must remain inside the country. Why this matters? This matters because the enriched uranium lies at the heart of nuclear capability concerns. Second issue, which is related to oil, okay, it is the Strait of Hormuz. The United States wants stable commercial shipping to resume. Why? Because the oil markets remain highly sensitive to disruption. Third is about the sanctions and the frozen assets. Reports have indicated that the discussions may include unfreezing of Iranian funds held abroad. Fourth, the regional order itself. The United States is also attempting broader diplomatic restructuring in the Middle East. This includes expansion of the Abraham Accords framework. So these talks are not merely about stopping violence temporarily. They are about reshaping the regional power arrangements. And that is why the negotiations are extremely difficult. Because every side wants something fundamentally different. So, officially, the talks are about peace, but strategically, they are about power. Now, coming to the final question is about where is the region heading? Okay, that means let us consider the different kinds of possibilities of peace, controlled conflict, or regional war. Which kind of possibility are we to see? So, one possibility is controlled instability. Controlled instability. In this scenario, you'll find that the limited strikes will continue and negotiations will also continue alongside. And no side pushes towards a full scale war. Second possibility, wider escalation. A major incident, whether involving Iran, Hezbollah, Iran, Israel, or US forces, could rapidly trigger a much broader regional conflict. Third, oil markets remain vulnerable. That means as long as the Strait of Hormuz remains under threat, the global energy markets will remain sensitive and unstable. And fourth, modern geopolitics itself has changed. Countries now frequently continue and combine military signaling, they combine economic pressure, sanctions, and diplomacy, all of these things at the same time. And this makes the conflicts harder to resolve because war and negotiation increasingly happen simultaneously. So finally, the trust remains extremely low across the regions. And without trust, long term peace becomes difficult. So now, ask yourself, is the Middle East moving towards peace or is it entering a phase of permanently managed conflict? Here, an important line that we should remember, that modern wars are no longer fought only on battlefields, they are fought through negotiations, sanctions, energy routes, and strategic pressure. And the Middle East today is perhaps the clearest example of that reality. Thank you so much.